10 minutes to 4, the Human Sciences Research Council, working together with market researchers Ipsos, have undertaken a study to look at South African attitudes towards immigrants. This very much in the light of a lot of stuff on Twitter under the hashtag Put South Africa First. How has this influenced the public's attitude towards migrants and refugees? Well, to talk about this, we're joined by Dr. Stephen Gordon, who's Senior Research Specialist at the Human Sciences Research Council. Dr. Gordon, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you very much for having me.
What did you set out to look at, and what did you find?
So we interviewed people in the 4 provinces where most cross-border migrants and refugees live: Limpopo, Gauteng, the Western Cape, and KwaZulu-Natal. And we asked them how they felt about cross-border migrants and refugees. And we found that there were many negative stereotypes about these communities in the towns and villages of the province we surveyed. Many people made an explicit link between immigration and the many social problems that our country faces, including crime, unemployment, and disease. This is interesting because empirical evidence will tell us that there is no relationship between immigration and major social problems, including unemployment and crime. Indeed, a World Bank study from 2018 will tell you that immigration is economically beneficial for South Africa. That finding confirmed by a later OECD study. Still, it is very disheartening to see that many ordinary people describe refugees and cross-border migrants as violent, as job stealers, as dishonest, and as fundamentally different from themselves.
Dr. Gordon, there's reality and there's reality, and there's my perception of people's lived reality will never be the same as the lives they live and the consequences they perceive. To say there's no relationship at all sounds to me like something of a stretch, because if there are more people pursuing certain jobs, a smaller proportion of people are going to get those jobs. If there are more people queuing outside a clinic, it will take longer to get through the door and get some medical attention. Are we not brushing off too readily the genuine things that people feel, and that in describing them as unfounded prejudice, we are not taking stock of what people feel to be true and what indeed, while not in broad strokes, may in fact be true?
If we look at it, what we want as a nation is people to come to our country to start businesses. People come to the country, they start businesses, they work in sectors where they're needed, they generate economic activity, they pay taxes. This economic activity, these taxes create multiplier effects. These multiplier effects lead to more jobs, better wages, and more money for government to spend on social services. Empirical studies suggest that immigrants bring in far more revenue into the South African economy that they take out in other ways.
But let me ask you for a number then. I mean, what proportion, if there are these extensive studies as you describe, what proportion of immigrants who come to South Africa actually do create business?
Well, as far as I am aware of the recent World Bank study, which suggests that the net gain is, I think, roughly in the area of, for every one international migrant that came over between 1996 and 2011, we saw the creation of one job within the national economy, although I would have to check those precise statistics. What we did with this study, we looked at people's attitudes towards international migration. So one of the things that we looked at was contacts with foreign nationals. We found that the more contact people had with foreign nationals, the more tolerant they were of these communities. This suggests that, people's perceptions of immigration are not made through contact with cross-border migrants and refugees, but are in fact born out of an absence of contact with these groups. We also looked at where people got their information on immigration, finding that it was the broadcast media that provided them with the fundamental information that they have, not their
Yes.
own personal experiences. This shows the influence of secondary sources like the broadcast media in perpetuating stereotypes and information that people had about refugees and cross-border migrants.
To what extent can you persuade people of a reality that they don't experience themselves? I mean, is this a question you engaged with? Because, again, I'm getting a sense that immigration is an almost undilutedly positive thing, that people who have negative views of immigrants don't know any, and what they do know is derived from the media. Am I simplifying what you've just said?
It's a little simplified, but I will say this. When we look at attitudes towards foreign nationals, it's not a binary conclusion.
Yes.
When we looked at the population, we were able to divide the population into 4 distinct categories. Liberals, those people who are very tolerant, compassionate toward refugees and cross-border migrants, they're about 1/5 of the population surveyed. Judgmental, those people who were very hostile, very negative, very intolerant. They were also about 1/5 of the population surveyed. This big middle group, about half, were made up of those people who were tolerant of immigrants, but they were very concerned about the impact of immigrants. Right? We called this the careful group. They're about 1/4. And
Yes.
then we looked at the ambivalent group, those people who are rather detached from the whole subject of immigration, which suggests that there's about half the population who are very amenable to persuasion, to move away from a cautious, middle-ish approach to a more tolerant, compassionate approach. So we shouldn't describe South Africans in a uniform sense as either being xenophobic or not xenophobic. There's lots of nuance here. And particularly when it comes to persuading people to become tolerant, to move away from stereotypes, there's a lot of movement that we can see. There's a lot of opportunity we can see to convince people
Yes.
not to buy into simplistic messages. Immigration is evil, foreigners are evil, therefore blood and fire is the correct solution.
Thank you very much. What do you think, Dr. Stephen Gordon? I'll try and find a link to that study, and you can have a look, form your own conclusions. He's a senior research specialist at the Human Sciences Research Council.
702.
More than a radio station.
Let's walk the talk.